Hello, everyone, and welcome to this and conversation. It is great to have your company for another absolutely brilliant conversation with a very special guest. Before we start the conversation, though, I'm going to tell you a little bit about AND. So, AND is a coalition of many like minded organisations who do great work within the neurodivergent community. We are the adult network, neurodiversity and dyslexia. And you see here this wonderful array of logos. So we've got Neurobox, and I am part of the Neurobox family. We'll be sharing contact details at the end. So we do lots of work at Neurobox, all about supporting adults within the world of work. We've also got here Succeed with Dyslexia, and sometimes you see me in the SWT shirt. I am still an ambassador for that wonderful organisation. We've then got the Adult Dyslexia Centre, so ADC, and we are always joined by Sue Floor, MBE, who is the manager there at ADC. Hi, Sue.
Hi.
Hello.
Well, thanks, Donna. Thanks for introducing me. Yeah, the Adult Dyslexia Centre was set up about 25 years ago now for a place for children to go to once they've grown up. But actually, even though it's called the Adult Dyslexia Centre, we do help parents or teachers, just anybody with a concern about dyslexia. It's the one-stop shop for dyslexia. We do arrange assessments, courses for parents. We've got one coming up in January.
Oh, yes.
For dyslexia and dyscalculia, we'll be focusing on. We also do training, workplace needs assessments, and we have a helpline. All of the and support groups, online and face-to-face. In fact, we offer quite a lot free for anyone who has any concern about dyslexia.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sue. And thanks for all you do at the ADC. Who have we got next on our list here of what fantastic logos? Hampshire Dyslexia Association. They do great work as always. Again, they've got a helpline, they run events, they often do conferences over in the Isle of Wight. Please do check out their details. I will be sharing ADC, SWT, Neurobox and Hampshire at the end of the session tonight. But next, we've got the Yorkshire Rose Dyslexia Association, and we are joined by their chair, Pat Payne. Hi, Pat.
Hi everybody.
Hello. Tell us a bit about the great work in Yorkshire.
What to do? Our main, definitely main focus is helpline. The helpline has always been, it's what we started many years ago, and that's where we really are focused more than anything else. We have run in the past typing courses. We very much promote English type as a really good source, and we've had some fantastic results. Youngsters as young as 8 learning to actually touch type at 30 words a minute, 90 plus accuracy. And you've got to see that to believe it, because it's mind-blowing. But sadly, we had to end that because the school we used has closed down. 20% that and all of that. So that's ended that for us. But we still do support that, and we are trying to get it into schools. If we do that, we'll have made a great difference, I think. Sadly, we cannot do as much for adults. We do rely on groups like Sue to help more with adults. We don't have anybody that really takes on that role, which is really tricky. And we are looking, we don't know how we're going to do it, we are looking to see if we can help schools to train up teaching staff.
Right.
Won't be anything as big as the BDA quality mark, but we do want to get more help into schools. That's our main focus coming in the next year.
Yeah, sounds great, Pat. And I love the idea that you link with the ADC as well. This is what it's all about, the connections. Are we going to be looking at maybe another one of your fantastic festivals in 2026?
I would love
to
think so. No, I'd love to think so, but I've got to say some of our volunteers are finding it, the work to actually do it is challenging. But I want to do it, as you can imagine, but it's asking other people to give up so much time to do such. I think it's our window on the world. So I very much do want, and if we do, Rachel, we might be inviting you to come along. But we just want, it's our way of reaching out and getting to our members. We have almost 200 members.
Yeah, fantastic.
And that's a lot of people, and we don't connect with them. And so the festival is a really good way of doing that. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Mondays
Well, we watch
next
this space.
meeting.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. We might be able to announce it here first. So thank you,
Yeah.
Pat. Thank you for all that you do in often very difficult circumstances for our community over in wonderful Yorkshire. Next on our list is Helen Arkell Dyslexia Charity. So yes, they are a fantastic organisation with a very rich heritage. Please do check out the work that they do. And last but certainly not least, along our kind of wonderful eminent logos here is the Dyslexia Association, based in Nottingham, but they work across the UK. And we are joined by their CEO, Kay Carter. Kay, tell us about the great work that you guys do over at the association.
Well, another great introduction. Thanks, Donna. Similar to all of the wonderful colleagues who are on the call today, we work predominantly in sort of diagnostics for adults and children, and alongside sort of screenings, but we also work with workplaces, and we provide sort of training and awareness, and similar to what some of the colleagues have said, you know, really trying to work with schools at the minute to help them, for example, with exam access arrangements, because there's been a lot of changes there as well. And yeah, we're just trying to spread the word, keep the momentum going, and raising the volume.
Yeah, brilliant. Love that. And again, thank you for all the work that you do in this space, Kay. It's greatly appreciated. Okay, so that's who we are. And this evening, we've got another fantastic guest. This is why we join together, to raise awareness and have these conversations. We are joined this evening by Rachel Clark. Rachel is an advocate, an author, and a founder of the coaching company ChampionAudhd. She works with NHS and charities such as Mind, Autistica. She's truly neurodivergent, so she lives with autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. And after feeling for many years that she was voiceless, she has found her voice now and wants to be a real catalyst for change, which is amazing. Whilst we talk to Rachel, we're going to share this slide because here I think it gives you a sense of who she is, the work that she does. We've got a picture as well of that great book that we're going to have a chat about in a minute or two, but also her contact details as well, everyone. Before we do get chatting, I'd also like to put a trigger warning on this conversation. We are going to cover some emotive issues this evening, including eating disorders, low mood, and so on. And so we just want to make sure that we look after you on that. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. I cannot wait to speak to you. So let's start right at the beginning, Rachel. Please share your journey with neurodiversity.
Yeah, so hello everyone. So my name's Rachel, and thank you for that introduction as well, Donna. So I think my journey with neurodiversity, for me, finding out I was autistic really was the turning point in my recovery. And I'm going to explain to you all today why that was, because I think it was such a monumental moment and it truly did save my life. And it allows me to do what I'm doing today because it's given me my voice. So I guess it begins, obviously, you know, you're autistic for your whole life. But for me, in the purpose of what I'm going to tell you today, I think the most prominent thing on part of my journey was that at 15, I'd struggled with my mental health for many, many years, since I was very young. And when I was 13, 14, 15, I developed anorexia nervosa, which is a restrictive eating disorder. And for me, basically overnight, my life completely changed. I found myself in a hospital bed. You know, I was 15. I didn't know why I was there. It was very sudden. It was very unplanned. And if you look at that through an autistic lens or a neurodivergent lens, you know, that is probably one of the worst situations that, you know, you could find yourself in, because it's overstimulating, it's loud, it's chaotic, it's overwhelming, it's unplanned, you know, it's just a nightmare, a living nightmare. And obviously being in that hospital with a life-threatening eating disorder, it was a very, very difficult time. And I think for me, that was the point at which where I didn't want to keep going, and I felt like I couldn't keep going. So for me in my journey, I had treatment that didn't work, treatment that wasn't adapted for me, and it did lead me to a point where I felt maybe this world is better off without me. I became mute. I couldn't speak up for myself. I felt like I had no confidence in what I was saying, and I guess silenced by a system that wasn't designed for me. So I guess in my journey, I was very lucky and privileged that in just 10 minutes, I met my nurse who saved my life. And that was through, unconditional love, empathy, understanding, and hope, and giving me hope. And that gave me a reason to stay. And one reason is all it takes. So I guess for me, from that point, I kept going, and 6 months down the line, it was very, very, very difficult. But I think, 6 months down the line, that is when I started to explore an autism diagnosis, because I found that a lot of parts of my treatment, especially in, eating disorder recovery, a lot of it is designed for neurotypical people. And actually, a lot of the reasons why I wasn't progressing in my recovery is because that treatment model wasn't designed for me, and therefore wasn't meeting my autistic needs, and actually was doing more harm than good at that point. So when treatment was adapted, working alongside my nurse, starting to make progress, that is when I reached out for an autism assessment. And I remember when I got diagnosed as autistic in 2022, 6 months after being discharged from hospital, I remember saying, when my mum told me, I remember saying, this is incredible. And I think that is the start of my journey in terms of neurodivergence. Like when I heard the words "you are autistic" or diagnosis autism, for me that was incredible, because at last I felt, free. And I say I am autistic, I am free, because it's true. I was set free from the chains of a neurotypical life that was destroying me. And at last I felt I could create a life that works for me and that I love. And that's exactly what I did. So from that point, it took a long time. I've obviously, this is a whistle stop tour, but it's many, many years from that point. I'm 18 now. I was 15, struggling all that time. And I think for me, it wasn't an easy process. It was hard. I doubted myself, and actually there was so many times where I felt like I couldn't keep going. But I think for me, what gave me hope is actually, when I was finding my voice again, and I started speaking, in sharing and telling even one person that I was autistic, I felt actually, I could be myself. And I guess from that point onwards, then I explored getting a dyslexia assessment, then, ADHD. And I guess from that point, it was just about finding out about myself, and championing who I am. And, for me, I don't see autism as a deficit. I don't feel like, there's anything wrong with me. And I think, for a long time growing up, I felt like I was broken. I felt like I was the problem, I was to be blamed. And I did blame myself for that. And I internalized a lot. I was masking day in, day out. But I think for me, I guess finding out I was autistic, and neurodivergent, dyslexia, ADHD, it's about just, giving yourself that self-compassion and actually the permission to create a life that works for you. So yeah, that's a bit about my journey.
Oh, Rachel, you take my breath away, because that journey is, yeah, it's amazing. And thank you for your honesty, because it's so moving what you share, and you're so brave to share in that way about those very dark times that you've been through. But my goodness, what an inspiration that now you are who you are and that you've chosen to share in the way that you do. I know it will make such a difference for folks. I want to ask you about your book, which is connected to that journey. But first, I'd like to talk more broadly about the work that you do across the community. I said in the introduction that you work with our NHSs, you work with charities such as Mind and so on. Can you speak broadly about, you've gone from you and your journey and now going big and trying to make a difference for the community? Please speak to that for me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think for me, if I go back to when I was like 15, I found out I was autistic. Obviously at that point, I guess one may say or consider that you're at almost like a crossroads in terms of like, you found out this information about yourself, or you find out, you're autistic, is that, how does that change your life in that way, and how do you move forward? And what I mean by that is not how it changed you as a person. It's like, how do you change your future, and how do you adapt your future to work for you? I have a lot of friends who found out they're autistic, and they go, they continue on with the same life that they were living, and actually they've got more awareness, they've got more understanding about themselves, but they continue along that the route that following going to uni or whatever that may be, and that's so perfect for them, and that's their journey. And I guess for me, the difference was that when I found out that I was autistic, I found out that's who I am. I said, that's incredible. And for me, I knew that I'm passionate about this, because as I said earlier and touched on, it's like it was the turning point in my recovery. And I thought, actually, what, like, this, as someone who was voiceless, as someone who was mute, and now to finding their voice, like, I need to share my journey and share my story, because this could help other people. And I guess it's about, sharing that narrative in terms of like, the narrative that I want to portray about autism, about dyslexia, about ADHD, and seeing it as, we should celebrate this, we should celebrate difference, and not condemn it. So I guess for me, from that point, I work with my local NHS trust. I've done projects such as the Peace Pathway, which is the pathway for autism and eating disorders. I work with Young Minds. You can see, my work on their website under autism and masking. I work with Autistica. I was in their award-winning campaign last year called Our World 2030. And I guess for me, this isn't about, I guess it's not about criticizing the system. And I think that's a big misconception. When I speak to clinicians, I do training on autism to clinicians, and, sharing my story. And I think sometimes it can be that a lot of people are quite hesitant, especially hearing from people with lived experience, because, a lot of our experiences have been, not helpful, because clinicians or the system hasn't been armed with resources or adaptations and how to support autistic people or neurodivergent people in a way that meets their needs. So I think at times they can be quite hesitant and actually, scared of that criticism. But for me, it's not about that. It's about being honest, but also how can we learn, how can we adapt, and how can we move forward and meet more people's needs. And I think, when people look at my story or what I've been through, like, I don't want it to be, a source of like, actually, she was failed by the system and this is the result. Like, that's not who I am. For me, I share my past experiences because people can relate, and that is what happened. It's what I went through. But for me, I feel like we can learn from that and we can move forward, and we can better support autistic people with eating disorders. We can, because every autistic person or neurodivergent person can and will flourish if they're given the right support to do so. And that's what I believe so strongly, because so easily right now I could be, exactly where I was 3 years ago, still in that hospital bed, or you know, bedbound or whatever that is, because, you know, that very nearly could have been me, but things were done differently for me. You know, treatment was adapted, and that gave me, I guess, the ability and that support in order to grow and flourish and you know, evolve into, I guess, the work that I'm doing today. So I guess that's why it matters so much to me, because I know that you know, even in the darkest of times, or when, you know, someone sees absolutely no future for themselves, there is hope, because, you know, I'm that living proof that change is possible, because I never would have believed that for myself. So
such a wonderful positive message. Okay, so the next step then is this wonderful book that you've written, and this title is amazing, How to Save Your Own Life. So on the back of everything you've just shared about making that difference, playing it forward, reaching out into the community, this book then has come along from you. Tell me everything about it, Rachel. How did the idea come? What's in there? Where can we get it? Please share. I'd love to hear about it.
yeah, amazing, thank you. So yeah, How to Save My Own Life. I guess where do I begin? So when I was 15 again, you know, a lot happened in that time, especially when, you know, that journey, it was the beginning of this, I guess, for me. You know, and I guess with my nurse, what we did is that, because I was situational mute, so I was sort of, I couldn't speak because I'd lost confidence in what I was saying. So I guess I internalized a lot, and actually, you know, I couldn't express myself and I couldn't speak. So doing something like this would have been absolutely crazy, because I couldn't talk to just one other person in the room. So because I internalized a lot and I couldn't you know, speak and verbalize, I guess for me, we found that writing was a really, really good way to express myself. So I started writing, and I did like a couple of pages, you know, a week, and I would show my nurse every session. And I guess for me, you know, at the start, it was very dark. You know, that was my brain. You know, it was black. It was very dark. You know, literature, because that's how it felt. That's how it felt for me. So, you know, but over time, that, I guess, those sort of chapters and those insights that I was writing down, my internal world, you know, it became more open, it became more colorful, it became more interesting, and, you know, all these different parts, because over time, as my, you know, I was going through recovery and I was gaining life and light back into my life, you know, I was able to see the world, and I guess, you know, reconnect in a way with the world that I find meaningful. So, you know, my writing began to change and evolve to reflect that. So, you know, that book isn't this book, it is something that I really hope to publish one day. But I guess from that, it evolved into this self-help book, which is essentially absolutely everything that I've learned on my journey, recovering from an eating disorder as an autistic person. So the title, How to Save Your Own Life, that is because no one can do it for you. You know, no one can, people can put that food in your mouth, or people can give you every single reason under the sun why you should recover, but no one can do it for you. And that is why I wanted to write this book, because it's about how can you save your own life. And I think, you know, coming from this book is everything that I learned, the work that I did with my nurse, you know, but more than that, it's like a source of comfort and a source of hope. You know, there is no books right now on autism and eating disorders from someone who's lived through it, that I know of anyway. And I think that's why it was so special to me. You know, this is the book that I needed, and I wish I had. And I think, you know, I started writing it, you know, I got the book deal, I think I was like 16 when I inquired, 17 when I got it. You know, I've sort of recovered and grown up with this book and writing this book. Obviously it's coming out next year, which is so exciting, and I'm so excited for it. And it definitely won't be, you know, my last. Like I'm already like eager to write, you know, it helps me so much. But I think this book is so special because I guess it is that emblem of hope, and actually, you know, I guess, a tribute to what I went through, but also a source of comfort and, yeah, a guidance for other people going through the same thing. So I guess, even if you haven't been through an eating disorder, or you don't know anyone with an eating disorder, or it's like new territory for you, that is completely okay. But I still encourage you, with the book, it's not just for people who've lived through an eating disorder. It's a wider reflection on being autistic, navigating the healthcare system, and just a way of actually inviting you inside the brain of someone who is autistic, battling an eating disorder, and actually what you can do, adaptations you can make, and it does have a happy ending. And I think that's what I would say as well to anyone who's going to read it. And you can buy it on Amazon as well.
Amazon. I was going to say, where can we get it? Rachel, when is it out? You said next year. Have you got an idea about when that might be?
Yeah, so it should be publishing April 2026. You can, if you go on Amazon, you can pre-order it, and it will keep you updated with all the dates and things like that. But yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, very excited. Please come back next year when it's been published, and we'd love to chat with you again about it. But I love what you say, because yes, for sure, it's for the community that you are a part of. People who've got this lived experience of having an eating disorder and overcoming that, and all the barriers and so on that you've gone through, especially as a neurodivergent person. But actually, I love what you say. It's for somebody who wants a message of hope, or somebody who maybe just wants to know more about the autistic community and so on. So it's got lots of different folks potentially be interested in this story, isn't it? Even if this is not something that you've gone through yourself, I think it really helps when somebody like you has spoken so eloquently in that way. Why, beyond what you've already shared, why was it important then for you to make a difference in this way? If you don't mind me saying, and I mean this as a huge compliment, you are still incredibly young and you've achieved so much already, which is amazing. Why did you think, right, okay, that's what my journey is, and now I want to really make a difference for everybody else? Please try and share, what your journey's been that made that difference, because there's a lot of folks who are not like you, Rachel, who think just about, their own journey, which is perfectly fine, but you've got this new way now in your life where you're wanting to make a difference for the community.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think for me, obviously, growing up undiagnosed autistic, it was very challenging, because obviously you're growing up in a world that's not designed for you. And I guess, for me, like now, I don't think that I ever, in recent years, since I found out, I'm neurodivergent, I don't think there was ever a point where I was like, I want to, use this as a way of like helping other people, or, for me, it just evolved like that. Like I had, I got in touch with people, I forged these opportunities, especially with the book, like did that, completely alone. Like I was the one who was reaching out to the publishers and inquiring, because I think for me, and I think it is part of being autistic and neurodivergent, for me, if I have, I guess, a dream or a passion or a purpose, like I just won't give up. And I think that's for me, like I know that this is my purpose. And I think growing up, I was always, so much happier around individuals, with SEND. My best friend in the whole entire world has Down syndrome, but I never thought of it like that. I never thought of my friend with Down syndrome. I never even saw it in that way. I just saw her, I see her as my best friend. And I think that's the way, I see neurodivergence. I've never, I guess what's different from my experience compared to perhaps someone else is that for me, I've never seen autism or neurodivergence in a negative way. For me, the moment I was diagnosed, and I know this is quite unique, but like I thought it was incredible, and I just thought it was the best news ever, because for me, it's part of who I am, and I don't feel any shame or any, like it's any sort of negative thing. So I guess, for me, like obviously it takes bravery, it takes courage. You know, it's hard to put yourself out there to talk openly about these things, you know, like the confidence, the self-esteem, like obviously the bruises and the wounds that you have from growing up in a world not designed for you, and the trauma that comes with that. So, you know, it's definitely not easy, but for me, like, I think I know that this is my purpose, and I guess, you know, it just evolved into what this is today, because for me it's just talking about autism. You know, it comes naturally because I don't see it in a negative way, and I don't see it as something to be ashamed of or a burden or a problem. I just see it as who I am and something to be celebrated. So I guess for me, the start of my journey of advocacy was social media, when I started my page, like at Rachel Clark on screen, but you know, talking about autism, you know, my life, and I guess the comments that I've got on that, you know, videos with like 60 million plus views, because so many people relate to my, you know, to my story and, you know, what I'm saying. And I think that means the most to me, you know, getting those comments like, you know, my daughter feels proud of who I am now, or, you know, stuff like that. Like, that's what means the most to me. And I think for me, you know, I know, like, where I was a few years ago, you know, the darkest place where you just, you know, I did not think that I would survive. I did not think that I would make it through. So I think for me, now that I've almost got this second chance of life, when I thought that my life was over, you know, I just think, like, why not? Like, just, this is who I am, and I'm not ashamed of it. And I think, you know, if it helps one person, then, you know, that makes me the happiest person, to feel like, you know, even one person feels seen and heard by what I'm doing.
It's so wonderful. And I think what you share about your social media and so on, I think that speaks, I mean, it speaks to everyone, but of course it's Gen Z and Gen Alpha and so on. These are the newer voices now coming through, talking about neurodiversity, talking about how we navigate through the world. And it's so refreshing to hear those voices coming through. What would you like to share then? This is a big question. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Rachel. What thoughts would you like to share then for folks who are listening? Words of wisdom. You know, we're coming to the end of 2025, and you've got a very exciting year then next year as your book gets published and so on. I'd love to hear what messages of hope or thoughtfulness you'd like to share with those who are listening.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest message that I have is obviously, you know, hope, because, you know, for me, like, I know I've said it already, but like, I truly did not think that I would survive another day, let alone get to where I am now. So, you know, I don't know if there's people listening to me right now who, you know, may feel like they want to leave this world forever, or they feel like they don't see a future for themselves, or even they just don't feel comfortable with who they are. They're, you know, maybe they're ashamed of themselves, or they're worried about what the future may look like. You know, what I would say is that actually, you know, hope is real, and hope, you know, does exist. And actually, even when the darkest of times, like, there is light and there is hope. So I think for me, you know, like, change scared me so much, especially, like, you know, back then, like, it was the scariest thing, but change scared me the most. But the fear of nothing changing was actually what scared me more, because being stuck in that place, being stuck in that world of darkness, and, you know, everything falling apart around me, like, that was actually a lot more scarier. So, you know, for the things that, you know, feel out of your comfort zone or feel big, or whether it's, you know, wearing a sunflower lanyard, or, you know, advocating for yourself or accommodating your needs, you know, I would just say, like, change scared me the most, but actually the fear of nothing changing scared me more. And, you know, for me, I think there's a lot of people that are scared to say around autism, to speak up, you know, whether that's dyslexia, ADHD. You know, for me, I just think, like, you know, of course I've received 250,000 hate comments on a video, but if you always look for that, you know, you're never going to see, you know, the, I don't know, 300,000 comments of love and support and the, you know, 2.5 million likes. You know, you've got to, I guess, connect with others in that community. You know, if I had listened to, you know, negative voices and I guess the criticisms or the negativity that I faced, you know, I would still be in that dark room and not have moved forward. So, you know, for me, it is about, you know, showing that hope is real and actually forging your own life for yourself, and a life that works for you. It is terrifying, but you know, it is so worth it. So yeah, I wouldn't want anyone to look at me and think, actually, you know, she's an inspiration, or she's like, you know, perfect. I'm definitely not perfect, but I'm trying. And I think, you know, even if I still struggle with certain things, or I doubt myself, you know, it is a journey. And I think, you know, I have saved my own life and I will continue to save it. And I think, you know, that's the message that I would give to anyone, is that there is hope and there is light. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And that's such a wonderful message about hope and light, and about not giving up, because I think that's the essence of everything you've shared. It's that keeping on and not giving up and going forward, even when fear is walking with you in that way. I think I may know the answer to this, Rachel, but I'm going to ask you, do you feel optimistic then as we look towards the new year? I know you've got a lot of exciting things coming your way. Maybe answer this on a personal level with your book and so on, but also maybe more broadly, because I think we're in uncertain times at the minute for the neurodivergent community. So are you optimistic for where we're heading into 2026?
Yeah, thank you. I think obviously we're in a very turbulent period. You know, I have, you know, a community and a safe space, and I forged like a space where people do feel heard and validated, and I hope people feel safe and like that they belong and that they can be their authentic self. But I guess on a wider level, you know, what we're hearing in the media or society at the moment, you know, this narrative that actually autism needs to be eradicated, or a tragedy to families, or, you know, wearing ear defenders in classrooms are insane. Like, for me, I guess the overall message that I would say is that, you know, what narrative are we teaching you know, autistic people, neurodivergent people who are growing up right now? You know, like, I think, you know, stigma is taught, and I think we all have a responsibility that actually we can change this narrative, you know. Like, I'm not saying anyone has to, or everyone has to, like, go and, you know, go on protests or make a social media account, put themselves out there. That is not for everyone, and that is completely okay. But I think it's about encouraging, you know, members of your community, or showing acts of kindness, not judging people, you know, being there for people and actually accepting them for who they are, celebrating neurodivergence. You know, we all can do that, and we all can make a difference. And I think, you know, the narrative of, you know, neurodivergence or whatever, you know, it wearing a defender is seen as insane. I think it stems from a world that, you know, is resistant to change and resistant to learning. And I think my belief and my overall ethos and message, you know, is that the greatest gift for autistic people or neurodivergent individuals is a society that is open to learning, and a society that is open to change. Because I think that is the greatest gift going forward, you know, going into 2026 or, you know, beyond. I think, you know, no one's going to get it right all the time. I'm not perfect. I'm not an expert in autism. I'm only an expert in my own experience. And I think we all have more to learn. And I don't expect people to get it right all the time. But I think that where hope emerges and where change happens is people, or communities, or, you know, wider than that, is a society that is open to learning and open to educating themselves. And actually, you know, what is, you know, wrong with people expressing themselves or using sensory aids? You know, I know we may not have grown up with it, but stigma is taught. And I think, you know, if we encourage it, if we celebrate people for who they are, you know, then the next generation will grow up in a world where neurodivergence is celebrated and is championed. And I think, you know, going back to my coaching business and, you know, my book and stuff like that, like, you know, it all stems from, I believe we should celebrate neurodivergence and champion it. And that's why I called my business ChampionAudhd ADHD, because that's what we should do. You know, like, I'm not saying that neurodivergent people don't face challenges or setbacks, of course, but I think, you know, it's important to validate that and to seek support and to adapt our lives to work for us. But I think it's also important to celebrate who we are and actually not see that as, you know, a problem or blame us for who we are. You know I grew up believing that I was broken, but I think going forward, you know, 2026 and beyond, you know, I am optimistic because I feel like, you know, there is hope for the future. And, you know, if we continue to, you know, do things like this and pockets of hope emerging, you know, in the community, like, I think over time, attitudes will change and, you know, we can create a world that's more better equipped to support neurodivergent individuals.
Oh, what a wonderful message. That's so positive, and I'm not surprised that you're sharing that way, because the whole conversation has been so optimistic and hopeful, despite the fact that we're talking about very serious issues here. So thank you, Rachel. Thank you for everything that you do in the community. I look to 2026 with real excitement about following you and seeing all your adventures, and I hope that everybody else does as well. And there's your kind of contact, your handles and so on, if folks want to connect with you on media. So thank you. And I mean it. Let's try and get you back next year at some point to talk about this wonderful book once we've all got a copy of it. I can't wait. And thank you everyone for listening in. As always, we end our conversation with the contact details of the coalition. Rachel's talked a lot this evening about the importance of community, not feeling on your own. And as I said at the beginning, we were covering some, you know, emotive issues this evening. Please know that you are not on your own. There is support out there with Mind Charity, the Samaritans, and so on, for any of you who have mental health issues or you feel incredibly vulnerable. For those of you who also want to reach out to the neurodivergent community, here are their contact details. So we have the Adult Dyslexia Centre helpline number, helpline email address. We have Yorkshire Rose Dyslexia Association. Again, we've heard from Pat this evening. Their contact details as well. Hampshire Dyslexia Association. They've got a helpline email address if you're in that part of the world. We heard from Kay Carter this evening. She is the CEO of the Dyslexia Association. They have an email address. Please drop them a message and request a call back, and they will be in touch with you. Succeed with Dyslexia doesn't have a helpline, but they've got lots of fantastic free resources if you want to find out more. Go and take a look at their YouTube channel. It's brilliant. Neurobox, similar, don't have a helpline. They don't work in that way, but do have lots of free resources if you take a look at their website. And also if you reach out to them about support with access to work or training and so on. And last but certainly not least, we've got Helen Arkell Dyslexia Charity. Again, not a helpline as such, but lots of great resources and lots of support in a variety of ways, including tuition and assessment and so on. That just leaves me then to say a huge thank you to all our guests this year. We've had another wonderful year with all fantastic experts, and we look ahead now to another wonderful 2026, so a new year, and we will join you then. So thank you everyone. Take care and have a great festive season. Bye bye.
No more.
Right, we're off recording.